Welcome to Furniture Industry News. Today is Friday, June 26, 2026, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us. This week is all about reading the consumer because the signals are mixed in a way that really matters for our business. Spending looks stable on the surface, but underneath it, people are buying fewer things and watching every dollar. We've got a sobering count of bankruptcies across the industry, a fresh read on the housing market, some genuinely encouraging news about homebuyer attitudes, and a look at where retail technology is heading at the halfway point of the year. Let's get into it. Let's start with the consumer, because everything else flows from here. New data from the research firm Circana shows that overall retail spending in May rose about 1.33% compared to a year ago. That sounds fine, but here's the catch. While the dollars went up, the actual number of items people bought went down by about 1.5%. In other words, people are spending a little more money on fewer things, and most of that dollar growth is just higher prices, not stronger demand. Now look closer at the discretionary category, the bucket that includes home goods and furnishings. Revenue there crept up just over 1%, but unit sales dropped more than 4%. That gap tells the real story. When money gets tight, people don't stop spending entirely. They stop buying the things they can put off. And a new sofa or a new bedroom set is one of the easiest purchases in a household to postpone. Circana describes shopper behavior right now as increasingly erratic, shaped in part by the delayed sting of higher costs working its way through the economy. One of their advisors, Marshall Cohen, made a point I think every operator should sit with. He said, resilience in consumer spending is not automatic. It has to be activated. That's the whole game right now. The customer is engaged and intentional, but they need a real reason to buy today, whether that's smart financing, a genuine promotion, or a sense of urgency you create on the floor.
That pressure is showing up in a very real way, and it brings me to the next story. Furniture Today is reporting that the home furnishings industry has now logged 12 bankruptcy filings, restructurings, or insolvency actions in just the first 6 months of this year. 12! And these span the whole sector: furniture retailers, mattress retailers, manufacturers, suppliers, and even one of the bedding world's international brands. The year opened with an online furniture retailer called Novi Studio filing in early January, followed by liquidations of 2 more retailers in February. The pace picked up from there. In April, QVC announced a restructuring plan aimed at eliminating roughly $5.3 billion in debt, and a 126-year-old Australian bedding maker, A.H. Beard, entered administration. And just this month, Sleep Number filed for Chapter 11 and announced a deal to sell substantially all of its assets to Sleep Country Canada for $415 million. Now, each of these has its own story behind it, but viewed together, 12 filings in 6 months isn't bad luck, it's a pattern. And the threads running through all of them are the same things every one of us is wrestling with right now: cautious consumers, high financing costs, a slow housing market, and relentless pressure on margins. Some of these companies are using restructuring as a way to survive and reorganize. Others decided that liquidation was the only path left. The lesson for healthy retailers is twofold. First, keep a close eye on your own balance sheet and your financing costs. And second, watch your suppliers just as closely, because a manufacturer or vendor going under can disrupt your inventory pipeline overnight. There's also opportunity here. As weaker players exit, there's market share and even real estate to be picked up by the operators who stay strong. Let's turn to housing, which is the engine underneath so much of our demand, since people buy furniture when they move. The news in May was soft. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, sales of new single-family homes totaled 580,000 in May. That's down almost 7% from a year ago and down more than 7% from April. Buyers of new construction tend to furnish from scratch, so when new home sales fall, demand gets pulled right out of our pipeline.
But here's the more hopeful part. Existing home sales actually rose, up a little over 3% from both last May and from April. That matters because those moves still drive furniture purchases, the replacement pieces, the refreshes, the new room that needs filling. The Furniture Today report on this said it well. There's still real activity in the market. The open question is how much furniture people buy once they've covered the mortgage payment and all the other expected and unexpected costs of moving into a home. So the practical move right now is to plan your inventory and your marketing around resale-driven demand, the people moving into existing homes, rather than betting on new construction until interest rates finally ease. And that brings me to a story that genuinely brightened my outlook this week. Bank of America released its 2026 Home Buyer Insights Report, and the headline is that attitudes toward owning a home have jumped. For the first time since 2023, more consumers say it's better to buy a home than to rent. 90% now say a home is a valuable investment, up from 79% last year. 94% say home ownership provides stability, up from 83%. And on the intent side, 52% of current homeowners say they expect to buy another home, with about 22% of those planning to do it within the next year. Why does this matter to us? Because rising buyer intent is a leading indicator for furniture demand. A move is one of the single biggest triggers for a furniture purchase there is. For a couple of years now, we've talked about the lock-in effect, the way homeowners felt frozen in place because they didn't want to give up the low mortgage rate they locked in years ago. This report suggests that effect is finally starting to ease, and some buyers say they're even willing to take on a higher interest rate to get the right home. That points to a real pipeline of future moves building up. The catch, and it's an important one, is that affordability is still the top barrier. Expensive home prices and high interest rates remain the main reasons people are delaying, and many buyers are still waiting for conditions to improve before they jump. So the demand is coming, it just isn't going to arrive all at once.
There's a related thread worth a quick mention here, and that's how people are adapting. Bank of America found that about 1 in 5 buyers and owners used AI tools for home buying research in the past year, and that climbs to nearly a third among Gen Z. They're using it for things like estimating affordability and researching neighborhoods. But when it comes to high-stakes steps like touring homes or signing contracts, they still want a human being they trust. And younger buyers are getting creative to make ownership work at all. Among Gen Z, about a third are considering co-buying a home with friends or family. Roughly a third plan to use down payment assistance programs, and nearly 3 in 10 are taking on extra jobs. That's the next wave of household formation forming right in front of us, and every one of those households is a future furniture customer. Let's switch gears to technology, because we're at the halfway point of the year and a few trends are worth a check-in. The first is agentic AI. That software that doesn't just answer questions, it analyzes data and then takes action on its own. According to retail tech columnist Dan Berthium, this is now showing up everywhere in retail tools, helping with everything from customer service to recruiting to quality checks. The second trend is fast delivery, and it's becoming a real competitive weapon. Amazon's rapid delivery service is putting many items on doorsteps in about 30 minutes or less, and expanding to millions more customers by year's end. And Walmart expects to have more than 270 drone delivery locations up and running by 2027, reaching around 40 million consumers. The third trend is smarter staffing. Kohl's, for example, is piloting an AI tool that lets store associates just ask plain language questions about sales trends instead of pulling a stack of reports by hand.
Here's how I'd think about all of that. You don't have to chase every shiny new tool, but the direction is unmistakable. Faster delivery is becoming table stakes, even for big-ticket items like ours. And you can close that gap by partnering with delivery platforms or using your own stores as fulfillment points. And on the staffing side, the real prize with AI is handing time back to your people. One robotics vendor cited saving up to 30 hours a week on manual inventory tasks. That's time your associates could be spending selling and serving customers instead. The smart approach is to keep humans in the loop on the complex decisions and let the automation handle the busy work. And a reality check worth noting. Starbucks reportedly pulled back on an AI inventory tool and went back to manual counts for the sake of consistency. The goal is reliable execution, not technology for its own sake. Let me close with one more read on the consumer that ties everything together. Amazon's big summer sales event is underway, and it's pulling in crowds. But people are spending less per order than they did last year. According to Numerator, the average order partway through the event was just under $46, down about 16% from a year ago, and average household spend was down about 13%. Nearly 7 in 10 items sold for under $20. Now, interestingly, Adobe reported that the first day still set a record with $8.3 billion in online spending, up a bit over 5% from last year's opening day. Both of those things can be true at once. More people are shopping, but each one is spending a little less. That smaller, more careful basket is the same story we've heard all episode. People are engaged but cautious, and they're prioritizing value. The encouraging note is that event-driven urgency still works. Nearly half of those shoppers said they finally bought something they'd been waiting to grab on sale. The lesson for us is that the offer has to feel like real value, and when it does, people will still act.
One last data point that reinforces where to put your energy. A new survey from Amplify found that 86% of shoppers are more likely to buy from brands that respond to them on social media. That's a huge jump from 58% just a year ago.
and nearly 9 in 10 consumers expect a brand to respond within 24 hours during peak shopping season. So a quick reply on social isn't just good manners anymore, it's a direct lever on sales. So that's the rundown for this week. The through line is a consumer who is engaged but careful, an industry feeling real financial strain, and a housing market that's quietly building toward better days. If you find these updates useful, please consider subscribing so you never miss an issue. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.